If you're investing in uranium companies today, I want to talk about 4 of the structural challenges you're likely to face as you're putting together a portfolio. First point is really the investable universe you're dealing in. There's really only about 50 pure play uranium companies available to invest in the world. It's very different than if you're looking at gold companies or copper companies or other resource-based companies where you have hundreds to choose from and of various sizes and shapes and length of tenure to look at. And that's why when money does move into the sector and into the equities, particularly during a rally, you're going to see some explosive movement in those stocks and those stock prices. So what this means to investors is that there is less room to diversify. And when you see capital moving into these companies, there's going to be lesser names, legitimate names, for that money to move into. The second point that surprises a lot of people is that there's only 4 or 5 companies today that are actually producing uranium. You're dealing with Cameco, with Orano, with Kazatomprom, with Paladin. To a lesser degree, we've got Boss Energy and Encore Energy, but in fact, that's it. They are the producing lineup in the universe of uranium. So now these companies are not to be confused with a myriad of others that are talking about development, that they are near producers, that they're going to be producing shortly. The fact is we are only dealing with a small handful of companies that are actually in the business of pulling uranium out of the ground and producing it. So for investors, this creates quite a bottleneck between actual supply and actual demand of uranium. It also sets the stage, though, for developers and explorers for re-rating as they cross into either development or into production. The third point that again surprises a lot of people is that most, if not all, of the developers that are in the uranium space have never actually put a uranium mine into production before. These companies may have pre-feasibility studies, they may have feasibility studies, they may even have permitting going on, but the fact is that these teams have never actually developed and put one of these mines into production. There are a number of challenges that are unique to uranium mining, from radiation management to dealing with local communities and government regulations, to the fact that you require offtake in many cases to get the financing you need to get these things off the ground. Without experienced leadership and the right partners, it can take years to get these projects off the ground. What this means for investors is that due diligence is really going to matter. It's going to be important that you are looking at a company who has a team that has worked in this space before, that has brought uranium mines into production in the past. Otherwise, you find yourself betting on a promise, not a plan. The fourth point I want to make is where the biggest returns come from, and that happens to be discovery. The producers, the developers may get a lot of the headlines, but the fact is that the biggest equity upsides we see are at that point of discovery. If we look at the last cycle, we saw Fission's R deposit take them from pennies up to dollars. We saw NextGen's Arrow deposit take them from a micro cap up to a $1 billion company almost overnight. More recently, we saw ISO Energy stock go from pennies up to dollars on the announcement of their discovery of their hurricane zone. Now, of course, we know discovery is rare, but in a tight market such as uranium, any discoveries that are found, if they can demonstrate some form of strategic potential, can create enormous returns. So for investors who are seeking asymmetric returns, you should certainly be considering putting near-term, high-impact explorers. And in that case, you should be focused on companies with large land positions, with access to capital, and incredible experience. So to recap, the challenges that you're looking at if you're investing in the uranium sector are, first, it's a very small space and a very small universe. You have maybe 50 pure-play uranium companies you're actually dealing with. Within that, you're looking at even smaller number of producers, 4, 5, maybe 6. In the world. Third, you're looking at developers who are untested in bringing mines into production, uranium mines in particular into production. And finally, you have to recognize that your biggest gains, your biggest upsides are coming from discoveries. If you enjoy this video, please watch these 2.